Got some stuff on the back side, and we'll get started.
You hot?
Screen lagging real quick. Hold on. Let me get this stuff out. Ready.
You live?
All right. All right, cool. Hello, and welcome to another week of the Lost Confederacy channel, where we focus more so on that first letter in the acronym, which is acronym APOW, which is American. Today you have myself, Chief Biko, Chief Alligator, as well as Chief Quietwater. And we got a special show for y'all today. Special day. Happy birthday to Dr. Martin Luther King. And that kind of just falls right into alignment with what we've been discussing thus far over the past few weeks, really about past month and a half now, in regards to just, breaking down, walking through this timeline with the Civil Rights Act and just the timeline of our history in general. So it's, right in alignment with what we've been discussing. So we're going to actually sit and park here for a minute and really discuss exactly what happened to Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all have seen the community posts we posted, a lot of engagement. So definitely shout out to everybody who's been engaged, who's been, again, just actively engaged, commenting, and taking this journey with us. Actually, right now, if you could, Chief Quietwater, I'm not sure what you're looking like in the chat, but definitely, if you could just shout out a few people, a few names that you see in there, because definitely want to give our appreciation to those viewers.
Definitely. Hello there, Willie Lily. I know that you tap in often. Aduke, Cherokee, Tolu. Definitely, I see those names a lot. So thank you guys so much for the support.
Absolutely.
And taking this journey with us of learning this information.
Absolutely.
And I'm pinning some of the things that we're going to be discussing. I'm pinning those to the top tonight, so it's easier for you to access.
Perfect. And how we going to start off today? Because we got to continue to, sometimes regurgitate that same information because, our group of people likes to fall asleep for some reason, like we have short-term memory. So, this is going to really fall right into alignment with what we'll be discussing today. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and play this video of the, what was his name? The Anti-Defamation League leader. I forget his name, John something, I believe, for the Anti-Defamation League, just pretty much explaining how this government, and I don't even like to say the word infiltrated because we'll kind of break down into it, but this government is full of militia members. So again, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and play this video. We'll get right into it.
Anti-Defamation League Center on Extremism is out with an in-depth analysis of a leaked Oath Keepers membership list from a year ago, which finds there were hundreds of names on it of current or former elected officials, law enforcement officers, and members of the military. The Oath Keepers are a far-right militia group, multiple members of which stormed the United States Capitol during the insurrection and then attack on January 6th. For more on this new report, CEO and National Director of the Anti-Defamation League, Jonathan Greenblatt, joins us now. Jonathan, thanks for being with us. So take us through the report that you all did, how you got your hands on the list, and what were some of the more troubling aspects of what you found?
Sure. Thank you for having me this morning, Willie. And I will tell you, this is a chilling report, the likes of which we've never released before. Last September, ADL analysts were able to get our hands on a data leak of the Oath Keepers membership rolls. There were 38,000 names that were essentially pulled from their records and put out in the open. Our analysts pulled down the information before the Oath Keepers could pull it back. We used open source techniques, including public records, social media, and other methods to review every single name that we found. And I must say, We thought the Oath Keepers were a threat when they rampaged through the Capitol on January the 6th, but we had no idea just how deep the threat truly is. We found hundreds of active law enforcement members who are part of the Oath Keepers, 10 chiefs of police, 11 sheriffs, dozens and dozens of active members of the US military, some 80 individuals who were running for public office, almost 24 of whom made it through the primaries and will be up this fall. And look, you might not know all of these names. Many people might know Arizona State Senator Wendy Rogers, who still months after the terror attack at the Capitol proudly proclaimed that she was an Oath Keeper in support of the group. But I'm talking about a county commissioner in Nevada, a town justice in New York, a firearms instructor in Pittsburgh, a pastor in North Carolina, and it goes on and on and on. These are individuals with access and influence. These are individuals with resources and training. And these are individuals who have shown us they are willing to commit acts of sedition and violence against the US government.
Jonathan, are you surprised at the extent of the membership of the Oath Keepers and other far-right groups who apparently, or maybe they do know, that the underpinnings of the philosophy of these groups are rooted in race and religion? In other words, they're against anybody who isn't white. And Jewish people obviously have a target on their backs based upon their philosophies. Does this surprise you at all that their membership is so diverse in a sense?
It somewhat does. I mean, look, right-wing extremism is a spectrum. We know that, Mike. And so there are white supremacists, there are sovereign citizens, and indeed, there are these armed militia groups. We know organizations like the Proud Boys, Tario, the head of it, is Hispanic. And indeed, there is some diversity among the Oath Keepers. But I think what's more frightening is the fact that they, for a long time, have prioritized recruiting active and retired law enforcement and military. We thought, Mike, they weren't being successful. We were wrong. We have a problem with an enemy inside our own ranks who has committed, as the Oath Keepers do, to uphold a higher oath, not to have fidelity to our commander-in-chief or necessarily to the jurisdictions where they work, but to their notion of the Constitution and a holy obligation that, again, puts minorities, puts Democrats, and puts ordinary citizens in their crosshairs.
CEO of the Anti-Defamation League, Jonathan Greenblatt, thank you very much for coming.
So yes, definitely wanted to play that video before we get started today, because it's going to pretty much fall right into alignment with what we'll be discussing. As we, again, break down not only just the whole civil rights era, but also just focusing in on Dr. Martin Luther King and how tomorrow it'll be pretty much a shit show in regards to, what they'll portray as Dr. Martin Luther King. We just got to realize, we got these people that actually, we know who killed him as far as this government, and then we'll allow this government to tell his story. That in itself is backwards. So, not going to break down too much into it right now, but we'll definitely be digging into it. So definitely, if you all have any, questions or anything, definitely give us that feedback, that engagement tonight, because we'll definitely be going in tonight. But without further ado, I'll start with this week's Inventor. And this week's Inventor, we have Latimer. I think Latimer. Latimer. Let me go ahead and pull up this document. And I'm surprised we haven't even done him yet. When I was going back and looking at the timeline, he's pretty much really the inventor of the light bulb. Everybody says Edison, but Edison pretty much stole his blueprints in regards to the light bulb. But I found out another patent or another invention that he's credited for, which is the evaporating air conditioning. So it's this actual image here. So apparatus for cooling and disinfecting. And basically what that did was pretty much take the moisture, I'm guessing, out of any type of wet environment and just have it go to like a dripping pan. That way it doesn't, create any mold, doesn't, hold any type of bacteria or diseases or things of that nature. An actual patent number for this invention is 334078, and it was granted January 12th, 1886. So just a few days past, that would have been, definitely over close to 200 years. So basically about definitely over 100 years from today. So January 12th, 1886. And this is the apparatus for cooling and disinfection. Disinfecting, and here's another pretty much graph of the figure. And again, this is Louis Latimer. And he doesn't own, or last time I checked, family doesn't receive any benefits from this invention or any other invention that he is credited for. Next, we have
As far as his birth date and all of that, any information on that?
birthday. Hold on, let me see what I put there. Yeah, birthday was September 4th, 1848. So September 4th, 1848, he was born in Chelsea, Massachusetts. So Chelsea, Massachusetts is his birth state. And yeah, September 4th, 1848. Let me change that to 12. And next we will have Chief Alligator with this week's Dr. Woodson quote. Pull that up real quick. And what quote were you thinking about doing this week?
I'm gonna do quote one. We read Dr. Carter G. Woodson quote every week. For those that don't know, he is the inventor of what we know as Black History Month. So when you think about quote unquote Black History Month or American History Month, if we're going to say it correctly, Dr. Carter G. Woodson was the one that created that. Quote one: philosophers have long conceded, however, that every man has two educators, that which is given him and the other that which he gives himself. Of the two kinds, the latter is by far more desirable. And that sticks out to me because that's pretty much what we're doing in the digital world or in the YouTube space. We cannot rely on the school system to tell us about who we are. We have to do that upon ourselves.
Definitely agreed.
Same. And following that, we'll have Chief Quietwater with this week's legal definitions and maroon historical points.
Okay, legal definition number one, American, indigenous to America. Number two, descendants, one who follows in the bloodline of an ancestor, either lineally or collaterally. Number three, slavery, a situation in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another. Number four, prisoner of war, a person, usually a soldier, who is captured by or surrenders to the enemy in wartime. Number five, school, an institution at which instruction is given in a particular discipline. Number six, education, an enlightening experience. Number seven, recovery, a return to a normal state of health, mind, or strength, the action or process of regaining possession of something stolen or lost.
And lastly, the maroon historical points.
And the maroon historical points. Number one was a person escaping slavery, seeking freedom, or breaking the law. Number two, providing unity and a strong defense came first. Number three, maroon leaders were first and foremost military figures. Number four, Maroons established guerrilla warfare, planting sharp sticks in thick grass. And number five, Maroons knew their European enemies' language, defenses, and plans.
Thank you, Chief Quietwater. And just you reading that kind of reminded me, one of our subscribers, one of our fellow Americans had asked, why do we read the historical points, Maroon historical points? So I just wanted to get you all's perspective on why we read it, or why we read it. As I pretty much told him, it's pretty much keys to nation building. But definitely wanted to get you all's thoughts that way. We're engaging with the audience as well.
I think it's important that we repeatedly repeat doing it every week, simply because to ingrain it in people's head, the stuff that we need to do, like the recovery part of everything in regards to, it has to be a strategic plan in order for us to regain what we've lost, basically, or what have been taken from us. So it's not something that we could just do. Is going to take steps in order for us to get to that point.
Gotcha. Definitely agree with that.
You're on mute, Chief Alligator.
Yeah, for me, it would be Maroon historical point number 2, number 3, and number 5. Number 2, providing unity and a strong defense came first. Defense wins championships. Number 3, our leaders have to be military figures. We've said this before, that we're the only group of people who have preachers or religious people as our leaders. And we're going to get into one today. He was assassinated. So there was no defense set up for Martin Luther King. And then lastly, number 5, we have to know the Europeans' language, defenses, and plans. That's knowing our history, looking at, how we lost, why are we continuing to lose? So these points, we can take gain from everybody and rebuild ourselves. We're prisoners of war. Everything was taken from us, our language, our land, our culture. So yeah, we have to, in order to rebuild ourselves, we got to take the positive from everybody and then form like Voltron.
Absolutely. That's, like you said, that's going to pretty much segue us right into our topics for this evening. Again, happy birthday to Dr. Martin Luther King. But definitely we gotta address reality right now. Address the elephant in the room. When it comes to our people, a lot of folks don't want to talk about this situation. Don't want to talk about what happened during the 60s, prior to the 60s, civil rights era, things of that nature. So that's what we'll be addressing today. And we're gonna just walk down this timeline, show exactly not only what took place, but what continues to be the same reoccurring thing. Oh yeah, definitely drop those. So the first thing we're going to kind of go over is, also, connects with us in regards to why we played that Oath Keepers video in the beginning, was because it said that the militia had infiltrated this government. I don't even like to use the word infiltrated, because hell, this government's founding father started the militia, which was Benjamin Franklin. So how can something be infiltrated when it was founded on, or founded by, an actual founding father of this government, which is Ben Franklin? So I'm going to actually pull that document up. I'm just going to read through, not all of it, of course, but just point out some certain sections, because it's going to help connect the dots with what we'll be discussing today. So let me share my screen. And then we'll also be, of course, dropping those links for you all as well. Let me drop this link real quick. All right. So, kind of what I wanted to point out today was, even if we have, those groups of individuals, as Chief Alligator stated, our leaders are always those preachers or religious figureheads. Even those people who are practicing nonviolence still has to understand, just like the Maroon historical point stated out, that a strong defense is necessary. Like, that's necessary for nation building. We can't have freedom without the protection of said freedom. And even, these individuals, these Europeans, knew that from day one. So I definitely just want to highlight something here in regards to that, which is the Quaker. So I'm just going to read this first little paragraph here, not too much, and just kind of show the parallel between, or pretty much what we can take from certain things and again apply it to our own group of people. So as we see here, whereas this province was first settled by, and a majority of the assemblies have ever since been, of the people called Quakers, who though they do not, as the world is now circumstanced, condemn the use of arms in others, yet are principled against bearing arms themselves, and to make any law to compel them thereto against their consciences would not only be to violate a fundamental in our Constitution and be a direct breach of our Charter of Privileges, but would also in effect be to commence persecution against all that part of the inhabitants of the province. So kind of just break that down a little bit. It says, although they are not against the use of arms, they understand that's not a part of their beliefs, but they're not opposed to those who are willing to pick up arms to defend themselves. So we just parallel that with our group, especially, you know, again, religious leaders. We're talking about the civil rights. Who were those people in those civil rights? Most of them were religious leaders. We posted a community post with Hosea Williams, Jesse Jackson, Martin Luther King, and Ralph Abernathy, all who religious leaders. So they're saying, although we don't believe in ourselves of picking up those arms, we're not against our people defending themselves. So I kind of just wanted to highlight that because it seems to always be a point of conflict in regards to us not being willing to take that step. And we see in this, you know, first sentence that their majority religious group, the Quakers, saying, hey, we not with it, but we not against people that's willing to take up those arms. So kind of just wanted to, you know, point that out and let y'all kind of build on that.
Yeah, it's pretty much self-explanatory. Can you dig a little deeper in this and get to the terms of how their militia would operate with the mile radius section? But this clearly shows that everybody of a group of people is not going to be willing to bear arms. But yeah, the Quakers clearly understood that in order for them to be protected, they had to allow that group that were willing to do so. And so, like you said, it's funny how we got family members that will fight in respective branches of the United States government, but when it comes to us defending our own kids and family members, all of a sudden it's blasphemy. So we're being hypocritical amongst ourselves, basically, which is why the world comes over here and why we get such a lack of respect. I'll say this and pass the mic. I've learned through my own personal experiences, when you really want to be in control of something, you have to create the habit of saying no. And as of right now, as a group of people, we don't say no to anything. We don't say no to being killed. We don't say no to our inventions being taken. We don't say no to anything. And therefore, that's why we don't run anything. There has to be a standard. I'll stop right there.
I definitely agree. Peace is not getting us anywhere. Marching is not getting us anywhere. We have to stand up and we got to fight. That's the only way that we're going to be able to regain any kind of control over what has been taken. We're going to have to definitely fight in order to get it back. So I definitely agree.
No, definitely in alignment with that. And you stated the radius, right, in regards to people from certain areas have to be, hey, we're gonna have to call upon you in regards to that. Let me see.
And keyword search wouldn't pull it up for you.
Nah, not when I put in mile radius, mile or radius. I did see here. Let me see. Which articles of war, when made, as aforesaid, shall be printed and distributed to captains of several companies I then distinctly read respective companies that all and every captain, lieutenant, ensign, or other freeman who shall after at least 3 days consideration of said articles volunteer sign the name in the presence of someone justice of the peace, acknowledging his having pursued or perused or heard the same distinctly read, and that he has well considered thereof and is willing to be bound and governed thereby, and promises obedience thereto to his officers accordingly, shall thenceforth be deemed well and duly bound. So that's just talking about them being in alignment.
Okay, I'll search for it in depth. You can flow through. I'll pull that up and we can double back on that.
Okay.
Just know what it's say.
Up here. So that is pretty much the ground floor. Understanding that even though your religious belief may be different, we all have to understand self-preservation is key. So that's pretty much exactly what we'll be discussing here. So our first document pretty much is going to show the FBI having an understanding or pretty much knowing exactly where Dr. Martin Luther King was, pretty much having surveillance on him. And in doing so, pretty much was in cahoots with actually having this happen here. So I'm going to start here on page 16. Actually, let me read what was the problem. And let me know if I need to zoom in here, because I know it's a little small. Let's see if this will give a little bigger. How does that look?
Looks good on this end.
Pretty good, okay. So we'll start here. And this is introduction, the mission of the task force, the problem. So on November 1st, 1975, William C. Sullivan, former Assistant Director, Domestic Intelligence Division, Federal Bureau of Investigation, testified before the Senate Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities. He related that from late 1963 and continuing until the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., King was the target of an intense campaign by the FBI to neutralize him as an effective civil rights leader. Let's just pause right there and sit in that. So within this first three sentences, they're saying that the FBI intentionally targeted Dr. Martin Luther King. And not only did they target him, they wanted to neutralize him. Neutralize meaning kill. We're not even into the document yet, but this is what their own protective agency underneath the United States government, the FBI, is stating. Putting surveillance on a, remember, non-violent civil rights leader and stating that, hey, we have to neutralize him as an effective civil rights leader. Anybody kind of want to build off of that? Because again, we're highlighting that, again, this military occupation, but also just this warring that's being had on our group of people. And, you know, we listened to some videos early in the week from different platforms stating about, you know, certain procedures when it comes to this judicial system. But we're seeing here, it really don't matter what you're doing. They're willing to kill somebody who's not even violent.
Yeah. And the fact that they even started, like you said, it didn't take them long to get into the document, but the number one, the problem, correct. It says right there, how was he posing a problem when he was trying to be nonviolent and be peaceful in regards to trying to get things in line for us, you know? So definitely they had an agenda from day one. I think they had an agenda and they followed it all the way through the end, something that we literally do not do. But they put it in writing and they followed it through to the end.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we're doing this today in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And where we are right now on this channel is in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So what was going on was intense military occupation. And we understand the European likes to use different words. So they'll hide behind intense military occupation and call it segregation or call it Jim Crow laws at the state level. And so we was on Copper Empress channel last week, building on 40 acres and a mule. So we understand that we were owning and controlling the Southeast region of North America, but through their military, they had us up under war law. Here you have a religious leader or a preacher of Christian faith. And we also touched on that on Copper Empress channel, that we don't serve the same Lord. Here's somebody with Bible in hand trying to remove intense military occupation, which they call it segregation. And that's deemed a threat by a federal agency called the FBI. And they're using the word neutralize, which is a military term for kill. So we're going to read through this document, and we're going to learn what it's like to be a leader. I'll say that as well. You know, heavy is the head, or heavy is the cost of somebody who wants to step out and be a leader of something. We can never really relate to the mental anguish, the fear that his wife, his kids, and himself and everybody who was around him had to go through, knowing that these people are hunting you down and accounting for your every move up until the moment you died. And I'll throw this one sidebar in. They're doing the same thing with our rap artists today. They have a hip hop police. They're always policing us. The FBI tracks our artists. They don't have a country police or a rock and roll police, but they got a hip hop police. So anytime we organize or anytime we're in a group, it's a threat to them. And it's not racism, y'all. It's war. I'll stop right there.
Excellent point. Excellent point. And that kind of just leads us right into this next sentence. Sullivan stated that in the war against King, no holds were barred.
Wow.
So just as Chief Alligator just stated, it's not racism. It's not any derivative of, segregation of Jim Crow. It's military occupation, and it's constant warring against our group of people. As he stated, if you have power and influence to not only galvanize people, but bring people together, especially our group, then you will be looked at as a threat. And with that threat, the FBI, the CIA, which any other alphabet group you want to call, this government will try to neutralize them in some form or fashion. So that's a perfect example there. Perfect example. I'm just going to finish reading off this, and then we'll jump to another page that we'll be pretty much discussing here. So Senate Report number 94755, final report of the Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities. This and other testimony describing this FBI counterintelligence campaign against King reached the public through the news media. As a consequence, there was a regeneration of the widespread speculation on the possibility that the Bureau may have had some responsibility in Dr. King's death and may not have done an impartial and thorough investigation of the assassination. I'm gonna drop down here to page 16.
And before you get into that, Chief Biko, that last little section you just read, aren't we still witnessing that today, y'all? Where people back then, after they assassinated King, the people felt that the government had something to do with it. And so the government was going to investigate itself. The FBI was going to investigate itself. We're watching the same thing in 2023. They'll kill you on video, and then they'll say, we're going to do an internal investigation. Nothing's changed.
Right. How can they investigate themselves?
Correct. And not be subjective.
Right.
We've seen the play multiple times that they gonna let their folks walk scot-free.
Right.
So yeah, we have to have our own form of investigation, our own anti-defamation league, our own, our own organizations like this to actually get the justice that we're seeking, because trying to get it within their system, the same system that continues to kill us and continues to occupy us as a whole, is not going to give you that justice.
Exactly.
That's just plain and simple.
And let me just look at some of the things in the chat. Novo Anton Bay, I seen something, it's going too fast. Basically saying that they will do anything to keep their rule. Definitely, they stand united, and I think that we allow them to continue their rule, and we're participating in the government, so it's making it a little bit more easier for them to continue doing what they're doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Should be clear right there. So I'll start here on this bottom paragraph. Dr. King made his first visit to Memphis in support of the strike on the night of March 18th, 1968. On that occasion, in addressing an estimated crowd of 9,000 to 12,000 people at a rally sponsored by, I'm trying to see, I'm not sure what this is. Looks like CIME at the Mason Temple. He called for a general protest day on March 22nd, 1968. All Blacks were asked to not go to work or school on that day and were urged to participate in a massive downtown march. Dr. King and his party stayed at the LORRAINE Hotel, 406 Millbury Street, on the night of March 18th, 1968, and left Memphis shortly before noon on March 19th, 1968. Ostensibly to go to the state of Mississippi in connection with the POCAM. The city of Memphis was virtually paralyzed by a 16-inch snowfall on March 22nd, 1968, resulting in the postponement of the planned mass march on March 28th, 1968. Dr. King returned to Memphis on the 28th, arriving at the airport approximately at 10:22 a.m. By the time approximately 5,000 to 6,000 people, about half of whom were of school age, had congregated at the Claiborne Temple located at 280 Hernando Street for the start of the march. According to the plan of the march, the sanitation workers were in front with the remainder of the people following behind. The march was to proceed north on Hernando to Beale Street, thence west on Beale Street to Main Street, and north on Main Street to City Hall. I'm just gonna kind of park right there. Very descriptive. This in itself just shows the surveillance that they had on Dr. King, how they can be so descriptive, how they can be so accurate, even in regards to, timing of arrival from, planes and airports, stating, approximately, at this time, having a head count of how many individuals were in attendance. So just going back to what Chief Alligator stated earlier, we're the only group that has, policing for our group, no matter what their field of operation is, whether they be an entertainer, a religious leader, whatever, you want to call it. We're the only group of people that have, this type of surveillance being put on them. And you can see that they're doing it in great detail. Did anybody kind of want to build on that?
Yeah, let's just remember, this is quote unquote a man of God, a man of faith. This wasn't the Black Panthers. This wasn't the Deacon of Defense. This wasn't men or women that were armed. This is a man with the Bible in his hand. And like you said, they were basically manhunting. They were accounting for his every move. And this was 1968. Here we are in 2023. And we can just go back 3 years to 2020, where we're coming up on 3 years in March. We can just go back to 2020. We're insane at this point because we're doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Had he had a defense team that was watching the FBI while the FBI was watching him, he might still be alive today. But again, this just shows the lies that they will tell and hide behind religion, when in reality, they was on gangster time. They was on demon time, as the generation says now. Chief Quietwater?
No, I agree. They were definitely, like you said, if he had people on defense on his side, like you said, he probably would be alive today. I definitely agree with that, for sure.
Same. I'll continue here. The march got underway at approximately 11 a.m. and had proceeded to Hernando and Bills before it was joined by Dr. King. In the front of the march, led by Dr. King, reached Main Street, teenagers and young adults at the rear of the march near 3rd and Bill, 2 blocks from the front of the march, ripped the signs off their poles and began breaking store windows and looting. Mass confusion developed and the police moved in to quell the disturbance. The disruption of the march caused Dr. King's aide to commandeer an automobile, and Dr. King and his party were escorted by police to the Rivermont Hotel, operated by Holiday Inns of America. Dr. King left the march at 11:15 and checked into the Rivermont Hotel at 11:24 a.m., where he stayed until March 29th, 1968. Dr. King and his party were scheduled to return to Atlanta on March 28th, 1968 at 9:05 p.m. via Eastern Airlines, and were scheduled to leave Atlanta the morning of March 29th, 1968 for Baltimore. Thus remaining in Memphis on the night of the 28th was a change in plans. The city ordered a 7 p.m. curfew, and approximately 3,500 members of the Tennessee National Guard were called out to end the violence.
Let's stop right there. Let's stop right there for a second, Chief Biko, if you don't mind. We can see 2 different jurisdictions, which you just read. We saw Memphis police, and you got the FBI at the federal level tracking Dr. King. So the federal jurisdiction, they're sitting back watching the melee and the windows being broken, and they're not going to intervene. And then you got the Memphis police escorting them to the hotel. They know the time he checked in, the whole 9. The fact that it was a change of plans, so phones are tapped. The level of surveillance is what I want to bring out as we read this. It was a manhunt. I'll stop right there.
Yep, and
Definitely.
Oh, go ahead, Dad.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, the surveillance was top notch.
No, for sure. And kind of like you just brought up with the whole 2020 situation, who did they call upon when we were out there in mass in regards to protesting, George Floyd's murder? National Guard, right? So again, we see here who they bring out when it comes to our group. And like you said, jurisdiction is non-existent when it comes to our group. We need all hands on deck. So like you said, you not only have, of course, Memphis Police Department, but you also have the FBI. You also have the National Guard. You also have other members, other organizations here, Ku Klux Klan. You can name them, probably one phone call away. And like you stated, we just, connecting the dots with that Militia Act, being able to call upon these individuals in these areas if you're in a certain radius. That's what it looks like right now in regards to what we're reading.
Correct. And the FBI already admitted that these were kids.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that they were unarmed. They didn't say anything at this point that these people were armed, but
Correct.
Just the fact that our prisoners of war are starting to get out of hand in Memphis, that calls for the city police, the National Guard, and then you got the FBI tracking somebody who they want to neutralize. So again, no other group of people has ever been treated like this in America but us. Nobody. The Asian doesn't have this story. The Mexican doesn't have this story. So again, learn how to say no, people. You're not going to include us in the fictitious black and brown. You're not going to continue to call us black. We have to learn to say no. We have a direct gripe against this government. This government has been doing this since Special Order 15 in the fake Civil War.
Correct. I'll continue here. During the disturbance, 4 Blacks were shot, 1 fatally. Approximately 150 fires were set, and over 300 persons were arrested. Approximately 1% of the marchers engaged in looting and violence, and many of these were people who were criminally inclined and who had been in previous trouble. By March 29th, 1968, issue of the Memphis Commercial Appeal reported that many of the looters and window breakers were Black Power advocates, and that several wore jackets of the invaders. However, other sources, including Lieutenant E.H. Arkin of the Memphis Police Department indicated that many high school age students had put the word invaders on their jackets for effect and were not necessarily affiliated with the BOP movement. The violence and disruption of the march was of great concern to Dr. King because of the possible effect it might have on the planned POCAM. Therefore, he voted to return to Memphis and demonstrate that he had not lost his effectiveness in leading nonviolent marches. Dr. King, together with his SCLC staff, returned to Memphis April 3rd, 1968 at 10:33 a.m. After a press conference at the airport. The group proceeded to the LORRAINE Motel, arriving there at approximately 11:20 a.m. At about 12:05 p.m., Dr. King left the LORRAINE Motel for a meeting at the Sanitary Methodist Church Security and Surveillance Report of G.P. Tynes, Inspector, Memphis Police Department, dated July 17th, 1968. So again, right here, just showing that surveillance, I mean, plain and simple. Dr. King announced at this meeting that his purpose in returning to Memphis was to lead a mass march on April 8th, 1968. However, on April 3rd, 1968, United States District Court Judge Bailey Brown issued a temporary restraining order against further marches in Memphis. Dr. King returned to the LORRAINE Motel at 2:25 p.m. and sometime that afternoon, federal marshals served him and his aides with the restraining order.
All right, let's stop right there.
Go ahead.
We're all adults, everybody in the chat. Have you ever heard of the court issuing a restraining order against somebody? Normally, somebody has to physically go down and file a complaint and say that you're threatening them.
It's between people, person to person, rather than okay.
Right. This is the government filing a restraining order against him.
Wow.
And you said earlier that out of the 300 people arrested by the Memphis Police Department, they admitted that only 1% was actually looting. So doesn't that rhyme with 2020, y'all?
Mm-hmm.
How many of the youth got federal charges? Because Donald Trump said it was going to be a federal charge for the youth to be out there. And this ties right in with Black Lives Matter. All the money that Black are raised, how many of those cases are you fighting to get federal expungement from the youth that was out there after seeing George Floyd get lynched?
Exactly. It's all over again.
It's the same thing. But in the chat, have y'all ever heard of the government putting a restraining order on you? Not a woman going down doing a restraining order, not a man going down doing a restraining order. The district level court put a restraining order on this man. It just further shows POW status. Y'all can, I'll part right there.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I've never heard that ever for the government to put a restraining order. So it's an agenda, and it is exactly what happened in 2020, the exact same type of situation. Exactly the same. So nothing has changed at all, which should be clear for us to understand that it has to be more than just getting in the streets and rioting and marching and having signs. It's going to take much more than that in order to see any kind of change.
Yeah, I mean, both of y'all just pretty much broke it down precisely. Like you said, never heard of a restraining order being from a court to a person. Like you said, it's usually something that's done person to person. And that just highlights that, you know, our, professionals of our group in regards to, you know, law and legal will say, you know, we have to go to procedure, but obviously it's the hell with procedure when it comes to our group of people. So like you stated, trying to go through procedure, that shit is all null and void. That doesn't matter when it comes to us.
Right.
We're going to create something to make sure you are in a spot or make sure you're, you know, not moving how you need to be moving. So we're not even going to worry about our, you know, justice system or whatever that may be because one, it don't even apply to you, and two, nah, you're not going to be able to work within our system anyway. So that's kind of what that highlighted too for me. I'll continue here. At approximately 4 p.m., Dr. King and the SCLC staff met with the BOP group, at which time Charles Cabbage requested money to institute BOP plans to start a liberation school and a Black co-op. Dr. King agreed to use his influence to secure funds for BOP, and Reverend Andrew Young agreed to help write up a plan. It is believed these concessions were made to BOP in order to keep them in line and protect them from following a violent pattern. On the night of April 3rd, 1968, Dr. King spoke to approximately 2,000 persons at the Mason Temple. He emphasized that the scheduled mass march must be held on April 8th, 1968, to refocus attention on the 8-week-old sanitation workers' strike. After the speech, Solomon Jones Jr., serving as Dr. King's chauffeur, drove him back to the LORRAINE motel. Dr. King told Jones to report back on Thursday morning, April 4th, 1968 at 8:30 a.m. because he had to appear in court in connection with a restraining order.
All right, stop right there for a second, because you're saying a lot. You mentioned Andrew Young. How did the FBI know that Andrew Young was going to write up the plan? How did the FBI know what he said to the chauffeur? That means that there was wiretaps all within the camp. Yeah, how are they knowing all of this?
And basically, they were using them to silence the people, basically, right?
Yeah, what it sounds like here, this last part too, it is believed these concessions were made to stop a potential violent pattern. So again, how do you know there was some conflict if you weren't in that room, or if you didn't have a bug in that room? Who's talking to the FBI about potential concessions? You know what I'm saying? Like, nah, that don't make sense. So no, great point out right there. Yeah, all of this detail and all of this back and forth, yeah, you have to have a plant in these locations for you to know this type of information.
Correct. Somebody's wearing a wire.
Yeah, plain and simple. So we jump down here. Dr. King's activities on April 4th, 1968. According to Mrs. Georgia M. Davis of Louisville, Kentucky, she, Reverend A.D. Williams King, Dr. King's brother, and Mrs. Lucy Ward arrived in Memphis April 4th, 1968 from Florida, and registered at the LORRAINE Motel at approximately 1 a.m. Upon inquiring about Dr. King, they were told that he was attending a strategy meeting at a church. The three then went to church, but Dr. King was not there. Returning to the motel, Dr. King's brother, Mrs. Davis, and Mrs. Ward conversed in room 207 until they observed Dr. King along with Reverend Ralph Abernathy and Bernard Lee getting out of a taxi cab in the motel courtyard at around 4:30 a.m. Dr. King was invited to room 206, where he visited with his brother, Mrs. Davis, and Mrs. Ward until about 5 a.m. He then went to room 306, where he and Reverend Abernathy were registered. About a half hour later, Dr. King went to room 201, where he visited with Mrs. Davis for approximately 1 hour. Afterward, he returned to room 306 for a strategy meeting scheduled for 8 a.m. Let's see here. Solomon Jones Jr., Dr. King's chauffeur, returned to the LORRAINE Motel at about 8:30 a.m. to take him to court. However, Reverend Andrew Young advised Jones that he was going to court instead of Dr. King. Therefore, Jones was requested to remain at the motel. Dr. King remained at the motel the entire day, returning to room 201 at about 1:30 p.m. to visit Mrs. Davis. He was later joined in room 201 by his brother, Mrs. Ward, Abernathy, Lee, Young, and attorney Chauncey Exridge. The group conversed about until 5:45 p.m. when Dr. King announced they were going to dinner at the home of Reverend Billy Cowles. En route to room 306 to dress, Dr. King saw Solomon Jones Jr. in the motel courtyard and told him to start the car as they were preparing to go to dinner. This part right here. And this is all from an interview. It's stating here with Mrs. Georgia M. Davis.
And the level of detail, again, it's
Right.
clearly, it's one thing, we're talking 1968. So of course the military will roll out technology decades later to the public. But it's one thing to have a phone tap, maybe have a bug in a vehicle, but for them to know this kind of intricate information,
Exactly.
that Andy Young was going to go to the court hearing versus King, somebody was fire.
Correct. It's too much detail. Yeah, for this to be just straight off of somebody's memory for an interview. Unless they're writing stuff down, and even with that, it's still, yeah, still not really connecting. Let me see here. Okay. Well, 23. At approximately 6 p.m., Dr. King and Reverend Abernathy started to leave room 306. Reverend Abernathy stopped for a moment, and Dr. King walked out onto the balcony just outside the door to the room. He saw Jones standing beside the car on the ground level and began conversation about the weather. Jones advised Dr. King that he should put on a top coat as it was cool outside. During this conversation, Dr. King was facing west and Jones was facing east and looking up at Dr. King from the ground level. As Dr. King acknowledged Jones's concerns about getting his top coat, Jones heard a sound which he thought was a firecracker, and Dr. King fell to the floor of the balcony in front of room 306. Jones immediately called for help, and a number of Dr. King's aides, who were either in their rooms or standing in the courtyard, rushed to his side. Part right there for a minute. So again, just this detail, again, knowing exactly what was said, what was the conversation about, in regards to, again, you know, it being cool, how they said he stopped for a moment, as far as Reverend Abernathy stopped for a moment, didn't actually step outside. Yeah, definitely sounding like a plant to me, like somebody's wearing a wire, or this is a whole setup.
So we're going to ask a question. If we all agree that somebody had to be wearing a wire, who was sharing a room with Dr. King?
Abernathy.
Okay. And it gets deeper in this document, because conveniently the fire station was evacuated. The Memphis police at the city level were conveniently evacuated. This was orchestrated by the federal government to the city government down to King.
Well, let's go ahead and get into it then. It seems like this is what we're going to be talking about in this last couple pages here. So we have FBI intelligence and local police activities. FBI informants, Robert G. Jensen, the special agent in charge of the Memphis field office, and Joseph Hester, case agent, for Merkin, have unequivocally assured the task force that there was no electronic surveillance of Dr. King in Memphis. Bullshit. It was explained that Memphis was not in the mainstream of Dr. King's SCLC activities. However, FBI agents did observe the sanitation workers' strike activities for intelligence purposes in the Memphis Police Department, and confidential paid informants did supply information to the field office. Our investigation disclosed that there were 5 paid confidential informants providing intelligence regarding the racial situation to the Memphis field office on a continuing basis. The intelligence coverage provided by these individuals related to the activities of the Nation of Islam, Black students, associations of MSU, students of a democratic society, Black organizing power, Black United Front, Afro-American Brotherhood, invaders, and the sanitation workers strike. I'm just gonna pause right there. Again, when we started this build, we stated how they'll always continue the same play, kill somebody, then we'll have an internal investigation. This is exactly what they're doing right here. Our investigation disclosed. So the same people who are in question of conspiring to kill Dr. King are going to hold the investigation on themselves. Make that make sense.
Makes no sense.
Make that make sense. You think I did something, so I'm gonna do an investigation on myself to see if I did said accusation. Who does that?
Interesting.
Right.
Just talking structure, very interesting that when King was assassinated, the FBI is sitting there accounting for all of it. So those agents never tried to intervene. They're just the overseers to make sure the job was done, because they're watching all the movement. They're watching the Memphis police. They're watching, you see what I'm saying? They're being tracked by these FBI agents. They
So
just
they know
sit back
everything.
verifying that, yeah, the threat's been neutralized.
Correct, correct. We just here to observe and make sure that the plan goes accordingly. That's exactly what they're pretty much stating. So like you said, okay, let's just say you didn't have surveillance on them, but you had surveillance on everything else that was going around this time,
Right.
around this location, around this individual and Dr. Martin Luther King. So yeah, like I said, I call bullshit on that. Let's see here.
They're talking about 5 confidential paid informants, but again, that's a smoke screen. That's a 3-card Monty trick. This is FBI record. You're accounting for his every step when he leaves Memphis, when he comes back, how many people are being arrested by the Memphis police, the fact that the district court filed a restraining order against the man. Yeah, you have all this information up until the moment at 6:04 p.m., April 4th, 1968, when he was shot, and you're sitting there accounting for it, whether you're sitting across the street in a car or wherever y'all were at. You're just the head coach. You're just making sure the players on the field run the play correctly.
Correct. And like you said, you got all this detail, this data, this information, but you're saying here, have unequivocally assured the task force that there was no electronic surveillance of Dr. King in Memphis. Yeah, you're giving all
They
this
telling on themselves.
Yeah, you're giving all this breakdown of when he entered the airport, when he got on the plane, where he's arriving from, which state he's arriving from. You said Florida in one of the pages. Like, come on now. Your story isn't even lining up. So I'll continue here. There is no evidence that the activities of these informants related directly to Dr. King. Moreover, there is no evidence that would suggest that these informants were connected in any way with the assassination of Dr. King. MPD, Memphis Police Department, infiltration of the invaders. In addition to the paid FBI informants, an officer of the MPD infiltrated the invaders in an undercover operation. The officer, who was later exposed and is no longer with the MPD, was interviewed by the task force. The undercover assignment began in February of 1968 for a specific purpose of infiltrating the invaders, who became active about the same time of the sanitation workers' strike. According to the officer, the MPD was primarily interested in the invaders, not Dr. King, because the MPD was concerned about what they might do. The police officer was, in fact, accepted as a member of the invaders and participated in their activities. On the evening of April 4th, 1968, when Dr. King was shot, the informant had been on a shopping trip with Reverend James Bevel and Reverend James Orange. The informant said he returned to the LORRAINE Motel at approximately 5 p.m. and was standing in the motel courtyard at the time Dr. King was shot. He is positive that the shot that killed Dr. King came from the rear of the buildings, which front on South Main Street.
And so all of that is just motion. That's just like, for those that watch football, that's just a man in motion. You know, he gonna make sure he out shopping, make sure he's back in position, you know, to confirm the kill. So again, the fact that we as a group of people are still out here marching and screaming, no justice, no peace, you're sitting ducks. Because if they assassinated a preacher, then what do you think they'll do to the everyday person that stands up for this group with this prisoner of war status on the land? And again, they hide behind the word desegregation, and they'll hide behind the word racism. This isn't racism and this isn't discrimination. This is military occupation, and they were willing to neutralize somebody who was willing to stop intense military occupation. So if it wasn't for him being killed in the civil rights movement, we would have grown up under intense military occupation. So I think that's the one thing that we all, we can all kind of pick this thing apart and see, what happened and where the flaws, where the ball got dropped. But it took this just to be able to go to school with these people, just to be able to go on the side of town and not have to use a green book, which is what my back screen is showing. This would be my grandparents, because my parents were in high school in the late 60s. So this would have been my grandparents' generation. You see what I'm saying? So for those that are US citizens under this government on the land called North America, you don't date back to this time. And that's what we're saying the whole time. Our bloodline goes back prior to this. So now in 2023, we're supposed to just be one happy melting pot when your people come from another landmass. We don't have the same story. We don't have the same seniority on the land. You haven't contributed the same way that our bloodlines have on this land. So we're not equal. And we're not just going to be lumped in as people of color, minorities, all these adjectives. No, we are the American, and we've been held prisoners of war on our own land. I'll stop right there.
Absolutely. In line with exactly everything that you just stated right there. And again, just showing that timeline, showing that breakdown, showing the flaws within their own documentation, saying there wasn't any surveillance yet. You're given all of this this super detailed reporting of Dr. King's movements, and this here is just kind of this last 2 paragraphs are just kind of discussing some theories that were out there in the early 2000s, late 90s in regards to what actually happened, if there was people, set them up, things of that nature. So I'll just read this off. Matter of fact, let me try to make this a little bigger for you.
Before you do that one, can you go to the other document with James Earl Ray?
Okay, you want the background?
Yep.
Got you.
So we've already read how the FBI was tracking King prior to assassinating him. We understand that at the city level and at the federal level, the parties that were involved. So let's learn a little bit about the person that got life in prison, which was James Earl Ray. And again, this is our history. So we would still be under military occupation today, if it wasn't for this movement and it wasn't for, MLK, Malcolm X, the Black Panthers. A lot of people lost their lives to end extreme military occupation on this land. So let's see a little bit about the person who they ended up sentencing for the one shot, one kill of Dr. Martin Luther King.
I just want to highlight a few little key points, not getting too much into his background. Again, we will go ahead and provide this this link for you all to read through at your own, but definitely just want to highlight some few points.
I just pinned it to the top.
Okay, perfect. So it says here, he was stationed in West Germany, where he was charged with drunkenness and breaking arrest. Ray was discharged for ineptness and lack of adaptability for service in December 1948. So it does look like he was a part of, what is here, part of the Army, actually did enlist in the Army. So that was one thing showing here that kind of stood out to me. But then also just, ineptness, somebody not able to perform a function. So what that means to me. So this is the person that made one shot, one kill on Dr. Martin Luther King. Okay. if that's what they're trying to go along with here. Let's see here.
This section right here just tells you about James Earl Ray. You can read a little bit about this up until the point where just read these. You stopped at December 1948. Read those next couple of sections underneath, so we can just get an idea of who James Earl Ray was.
1948. Okay, got you. All right, so shortly after Dr. King was pronounced dead, his body was taken from St. Joseph's.
Skip down, go up, go back up.
Okay, right here. So after his discharge, Ray returned to stay with his grandmother in Alton 3rd, and embarked on a life of odd jobs and jail sentences. He worked for the WRIITEN Rubber Company in Chicago until he was laid off in September 1949, and then left for Los Angeles, California. On October 11th, he was arrested for robbing a cafe and was sentenced to 90 days imprisonment. Upon his release from jail in Los Angeles in the spring of 1950, he traveled back to Illinois, where he worked until May 52. During the time, he attempted to earn his high school diploma at night. He robbed a cab driver of $11.90 on May 6, 1952. He was found guilty of robbery and incarcerated at the state penitentiary at Joliet, and later at the state prison farm in Pontiac until his release March 12, 1954. Ray then moved to Quincy. On March 7, 1955, Ray and an accomplice, Walter Rife, broke into the Kellersville, Illinois post office and stole 66 postal money orders, as well as a validating stamp. The two men fled to Miami, Florida, but were arrested in Missouri. On their return, Ray pled guilty to the robbery, and on July 1st, 1955, was sentenced to 45 months at the federal penitentiary in Leavenworth, Kansas. Ray was paroled from Leavenworth in 1959. He robbed 2 grocery stores in St. Louis, Missouri, and 1 in Alton during the summer. Let's see here. 58, he was eventually captured and tried for the St. Louis robbery in December 1959. On March 17, 1960, he began serving a 20-year sentence at the Missouri State Penitentiary. Ray tried to escape November 1961 and again in 1966. Following the second attempt, he was examined at the state hospital in Fulton, Missouri, and determined capable of standing trial for escape. On April 23rd, 1967, Ray did escape from the Missouri State Penitentiary. Over the following 11.5-month period, he traveled extensively in North America, residing in such cities as Chicago, Montreal, Birmingham, Los Angeles, and Atlanta. On the afternoon of April 68, posing as John Willard, Ray rented a room at the Memphis rooming house near the LORRAINE motel. That day, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated as he stood on the second-floor balcony of the LORRAINE motel. On May 7, 1968, the Shelby County Criminal Court named James Earl Ray in an indictment for the first-degree murder of Dr. King, and an international manhunt culminated with Ray's capture at Heathrow Airport in London, England on June 8, 1968. Following extradition proceedings in England, Ray was returned to the United States on July 19, 1968. Ray pled guilty to the murder of Dr. King on March 10, 1969. Judge W. Preston Battle sentenced him to 99 years in the penitentiary. So
that's important. We wanted to read that because everybody needs to know, and we needed to have a digital record of this as we honor Martin Luther King Jr. on his birthday. I know Judge Joe Brown and a lot of other people believe that he was not the killer. And so when you go, after we can finish reading this document, when you go back to that Department of Justice document and read what they say, I just wanted you to read this so people will understand. During that time, a lot of people felt like James Earl Ray was not the killer. But again, we're letting these people inventory themselves and do their own investigation. So put a pin in what we just read, because we'll come back to this after we finish reading information on this document.
Great point, great point. So this document here, again, is just Department of Justice. Again, just kind of going over some theories that were being mentioned late 90s, early 2000s. One being exactly what you stated there, Chief Alligator, just with Judge Joe Brown, as well as a lot of other people. But this is what they said were the findings for this theory. Questions and speculations may always surround the assassination of Dr. King and other national tragedies. Our investigation of these most recent allegations, as well as several exhaustive previous official investigations, found no reliable evidence that Dr. King was killed by conspirators who framed James Earl Ray, nor have any of the conspiracy theories advanced in the last 30 years, including the Jowers and Wilson allegations, survived criminal examination. We recommend no further federal investigation of the Jowers allegation, the Wilson's allegation, or any other allegation related to the assassination unless and until reliable, substantiated facts are presented. At this time, we are aware of no information to warrant any further investigation of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
So once again, they're playing our daddy. We're the minor in this situation because we don't have our own investigating team. So again, here we are in 2023. When our people get killed, we let them look at themselves. That's not how inventories work. If you have a mentor or somebody in your life, there has to be somebody who's not attached to the situation. Look at the situation. They are attached to it and they're inventorying themselves, and you wonder why nothing changes. So clearly they're saying here, this is a closed matter. The man that we said did it. He dead and gone now.
And that's it.
That's it.
Period, point blank. Don't ask no more questions.
Correct.
There will be no, last sentence, we are aware of no information to warrant any further investigation of the assassinations. So.
Done talking about it.
Copper Empress dropped something in the chat that they killed them at the hospital. Even if that's true, these people are saying we're not looking into it anymore. The root of the problem is we don't have our own organization to inventory them.
To demand it, yeah.
Right. We have to have our own, but we have to think outside the box and create our own. That's our problem. So when things happen to us, these chief of police get in front of the video and it's the same script. You know, it's unfortunate, such and such was killed on this date at this time. We're doing an internal investigation. You know, he'll be on paid leave. You know, how many times we see the same script over and over and over again?
Yeah. And shoot, last but not least, definitely wanted to highlight this and shout out to, I believe her name was Michelle Marquise, for providing this document. And what she found was basically the laws of war. And we're just going to read a few of these articles and they're going to pretty much rhyme perfectly with exactly what we read, not only in that FBI document, but pretty much what we've been talking about our whole time on this on YouTube, which is just our military occupation and us being prisoners of war. So definitely want to shout out to her because again, there's no big eyes and little U's. We're all in this together, all able to provide information, proof of claim, and that's what we love to do. So I'll start with, let me
Hold
see.
on 1 second, Chief
Go
Biko. Chief Quietwater, can you drop the link on what he's about to read in the chat?
I did, it's pinned to the top.
Okay. So yeah, now we're going to read laws of war. Somebody put in the comment these laws of war. So we're just going to go ahead, Chief Biko.
Okay. So I'm gonna read, let me see, Article 52. No belligerent has the right to declare that he will treat every captured man in arms of a levy in mass, basically a group, as a brigand or bandit, if however the people of a country or any portion of the same already occupied by an army rise against it, they are violators of the laws of war and are not entitled to their protections. So anytime you try to rise up against us, you will not have any of these quote unquote prisoner of war protection. So basically, all no punches are gonna be pulled. What did that document say? And I'll pull it back up in regards to Dr. King, that they were pretty much barring no punches. Like we needed to neutralize him. So all rules of engagement are off the table. We just need to make this shit happen. That's exactly what this pretty much article reads to me. Anybody want to build off that?
Yeah, let's make that come alive. That if you could highlight where it says, if, however, in Article 52, the second sentence, if, however, the people of a country, us, that's us, y'all, or any portion of the same already occupied by an army. We know that from Special Order 15 from last week on Copper Empress channel. Rise against it. They are violators of the laws of war and are not entitled to their protection. We just read when them teenagers in Memphis started looting in Memphis, they took that as a rise against them. And so they 3,000 National Guard down there. King gets killed. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 and 68 gets passed, and you specifically were never written into the law and protected. Now let's tie that into 2020. George Floyd gets killed. Our people take to the streets, so you rose against them again. And they put the George Floyd Act in the trash can last year, and they never ended qualified immunity. So under laws of war, anytime you step up, all that means to them is you just fucked up because now we're not going to protect you. And I'm going to say this. I am 100% sure this government has never and will never write a law specifically for us. They can't do it because they never included you during the civil rights era.
Right.
They said
there's no real way to right the wrong because, right?
Right. So what I'm saying is they're always going to call you minority, underprivileged, person. But at the state level, they were warring against you under terms like no coloreds allowed, no Negroes allowed. But the federal government will never specifically write something for you. It's always going to be broad, ambiguous terms. Always. And I challenge you to challenge your senator. If you want to participate in this government, challenge them to say, I want to see y'all write a bill and use no other language other than American or Negro. Or, you understand what I'm saying? They're never going to do it. They can't do it.
Well, straight up. Absolutely right. And yeah, this is just, I mean, you can't make this up, man. You can't make this up. Like it rhymes exactly with what the documents have been saying. And just to go back, what did it say? So Sullivan stated that in the war against King, no holds are barred. I mean, pretty much damn near verbatim with what this article states. And there's so many other, other examples within these articles. Let me see.
Well, hold on. Before you leave off that one, let me add one more thing in there just to show you the bait and switch. We were saying defund the police when Biden got in office. They switched it to sensitivity training. See, they're never going to protect you.
Wow, sensitivity.
Right. So the murders have never stopped. So now you got people saying, now you got people who look like us are playing dumb saying, well, maybe that ain't working. You think? We were saying defund them, but again, they're acting against us under laws of war. It's just an ugly reality, man. It's just an ugly reality. It is what it is.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that's real. That's real. And also, shout out to another commenter just for having the discussion. I believe is Noble Atun Bey having a discussion with his or her brother, and basically the brother saying something along the lines like, "How can we be prisoners of war when we can have all that access?" And just really wanted to highlight this article here. A prisoner of war is subject to no punishment for being a public enemy, nor is any revenge wreaked upon him by the intentional infliction of any suffering or disgrace by cruel imprisonment, want of food, by mutilation, death, or any other barbarity. So I can speak for myself. When thinking of prisoner of war, I'm usually thinking, prior to learning this information, you know, and prior to actually walking through this history, I'm thinking of a tin cup, man behind bars, rusted jail, you know, getting fed scraps, and the only water source is coming from like a damn hole in the wall type shit. So
Right.
we confuse privileges underneath this occupation for freedom.
That's a good one.
In doing so, we thinking, okay, we're not prisoners, but just because we can drive around the city, or just because we have access to certain things. But we just showed an example of Dr. King. He had access to those things, but he was still under surveillance, right? He still got killed, right? So no matter your status, all that shit is off the table when it comes to our group of people. Just because you may have a little access does not equate to freedom. You're still under military occupation. And that just kind of, you know, drove that point home to me. It's not looking like, you know, cruel imprisonment or you just wanting for food, although they still are killing us, mutilating us. But as a picture, you know, that whole image of, you know, that I described, that's not what a prisoner of war is. And that's pretty much what this article kind of pointed out to me.
And it's yeah, it's unfortunate that tomorrow when they recognize his federal holiday, you're not going to get any of this information tomorrow through mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get an edited version of his I Have a Dream speech.
Right.
And you're going to have people from all over the world saying that that was his dream, when the truth of the matter is it was to end intense military occupation, AKA Jim Crow laws, AKA segregation in the South. So the lies have never stopped, but the only way the lies stop is when we know our history. When we know our history, then we know what to stand up for and check people on. Mm-hmm. Most of the people that are here, that are immigrants, that are melanated, they came after 1968.
Mm-hmm.
Kamala Harris is a prime example.
Right.
You had people who look like us trying to convince you that she's one of us because she went to an HBCU.
Bullshit.
Her mother is from India and her father's from Jamaica. That's why knowing our history is important.
Right.
Her family came here once the United States government opened up and said, hey, we're going to allow citizenship to the whole world. We're going to allow everybody to right to vote. We're going to allow everybody to come over here and not have to worry about being Jim Crow or intensely military occupied. So everybody comes over here and then they look at us with disdain because we don't know our history.
Exactly.
So tomorrow,
and she know exactly where she came from.
Right. And tomorrow somebody, and it's not going to happen, but at some point, people have to stand up and put some respect on the King family and on our history on this land and say, no, this was not for everybody.
Right.
This was because we couldn't go to certain restaurants downtown. Whether you played for the Boston Celtics, rest in peace, Bill Russell, right? Or whether you was the heavyweight champion of the world. At that point, Cassius Clay, which is the reason why he changed his name and threw the damn gold medal in the Ohio. What river is that up there? The Ohio River?
Yeah.
So it's like, we don't really, we gotta know what happened with us and stop letting these other people shoehorn their way into our struggle.
Right.
The civil movement was to end intense military occupation. It wasn't to blend everybody in. Let's be clear on that.
Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right with that too. Just like you kind of brought it up earlier, getting away from this black term, we got to first address, you know, stuff like that as well, because Congressional Black Caucus, now you see why they put all minority communities. They're not just specific to quote unquote Black people, because they're not even American. A lot of them people in that Congressional Black Caucus, guarantee pretty much have similar stories to Kamala Harris. So now you can see why they're never specific to our group, and they're pretty much broad and ambiguous. So because they know who they are, so they're like, nah, I'm gonna help my people under the
Right,
guise of
exactly.
being Black. So you know, it's just again the same play, just different players at this point.
And we just have to be more aware of it, just on a more massive level. You know, I think we are waking up. Hopefully we continue to wake up, because it's going to take more than just a few of us to understand what has happened. You know, the fact that we're reading it. It's, I always say, it's in black and white, but it's right here in front of our face. It's like we have to understand it and wrap our brains around it, that we were never a part of it. Therefore, there will never, like Chief Alligator just said, there will never be anything written specifically for us to make a change. So we can't ask for anything to happen. We have to do it ourselves. We can't ask them to do anything. It wasn't intended for us.
In my closing statement, this has been an awesome bill. Grandmaster J, I wasn't alive. I wasn't even born in 1968. The only time in my lifetime that I saw a group of men and women stand up and not go out in the public without arming themselves and not be arrested in mass was in 2020. And it's very interesting that that man is now incarcerated for bringing attention to Breonna Taylor's murder by the Louisville police.
Mm.
She never had a murder trial, and now he's in federal prison. So it's the same play, but people who look like us were laughing at the people who went out there in arms, that got the ball rolling for Ahmaud Arbery's murder by pulling up, who shut down Stone Mountain on July 4th, the Europeans' biggest holiday. Then they went to Louisville, Kentucky to bring attention to Breonna Taylor. That's the only time in my life I've ever seen us stand up and not get maced, shot with rubber bullets,
Right.
arrested. So we know what it looks like if we want to bring a claim in the public with our people. It's just unfortunate that we don't support and back the people who are willing to stand up. So
They shut that down fast as heck too.
So everybody that's saying, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? You just had it.
Yeah.
You just had it in 2020. Yeah. And mighty interesting that people on the internet who never got from behind the computer were throwing salt at the people who were actually out there. And that was a litmus test. That's the first time in my life that I ever saw. I said, damn. Yeah, they're not gonna lock them up. Some people that's out there like that, yeah, they're not locking them up. Matter of fact, the people were working with them.
Right.
Why? Because power respects power.
Correct.
It hit different when the people on the other, when the rabbit got the gun, all of a sudden it's negotiating terms. Well, how long y'all gonna be out here? What y'all plan on doing? Versus going out there with signs talking about no justice, no peace. They got the paddy wagons waiting on y'all. That's my closing comment. And it's something for us to think about, that we saw in our lifetime what it looks like to stand up and not
to be armed and ready.
And have results that come from it.
And
actually have results that come from it, like you stated. There was no case prior to them going to Louisville. You got to think about that shit. They reconstructed the case because they was going to do exactly what we just read in that those last two paragraphs. We not investigating this further. Had they not pulled up with them straps, then that when Breonna Taylor's family wouldn't even got a dime, let alone a case. So again, there was results that take place. So again, just circling all the way back, even if you're not with picking up arms yourself, you got to be able to support those that are, whether it's housing, providing resources, etc. And that's just a part of nation building. That's just part of us, again, reading those maroon historical points. Look, first and foremost, military defense came first.
right.
Somebody in the chat posted, I guess it's Sunuku.
Mhm.
said we need to follow Neely Fuller Jr.'s plan, not pick up weapons and get destroyed. I would disagree with that because we've had too many towns that have been burned and destroyed without being protected. Even if we did Neely Fuller Jr.'s plan with the 8 areas of activity, how you gonna protect yourself?
Correct.
Like,
Have a defense.
I mean, me growing up, both my parents always told me, protect yourself. And it's just interesting how we became adults and we forgot that natural law principle. First law of nature is self-preservation.
Correct.
We
Right.
just read Dr. King, what happened to him because there was no protection. So it's no way around. Well, I ain't gonna say there's no way around it, but history definitely rhymes. If we're gonna continue to do the same thing over and over again, why would we expect a different result? We could build a whole Black Wall Street. I'm gonna use the word American Wall Street, but y'all understand when I use black. We all know black is a misnomer, but you can build your own thing, pick any city in North America, and what's stopping another Tulsa situation
Correct.
Mhm.
without defense?
Nothing.
Right,
You could build it, but without defending it, you won't have it for long.
exactly.
And that's just, hell, any business. Business have security. You walk in Walmart, they got security.
Right.
They
You
have
ain't
some
just
type of-
gonna walk out the
Yeah.
door with Walmart.
you got some type of security system or presence. So like
Yeah,
that's just a part, again, that's just being in alignment with nature. So yeah, I mean, it has to be done, either that or we'll just be wiped out. And that's just the reality. Anything else y'all want to say on this subject before we end off tonight? But definitely a great build, great engagement.
definitely. I think we covered everything.
Yeah, we definitely need to know that information regarding Dr. King, because like we all pretty much stated on this live. Tomorrow we're gonna see the same stuff. Yeah. I have a dream speech, but we're not gonna address what really happened like we did today in regards to this man's murder. And then all of those who kind of pretty much reap benefits off of it. So
Correct. And Copper Empress, you're getting a little bit ahead of us. She put in the chat about the 1968 Civil Rights Act. We're getting there. We're getting there. But our people do need to know, once we get to that document, that's like the nail in the coffin. Because then that's the sheets completely snatched off the bed. And then you're gonna look at everybody who's been calling you Black, Afro-American, people of color sideways. So yeah, we with you. We just doing one document at a time, walking down this timeline. But it's definitely been a good bill. And once again, tomorrow is his day that's recognized. Put some respect on his name, and don't do nothing tomorrow. Hell, I think we've taken enough ass whoopings on this land that is federally recognized. Stay your ass at home. Find something else to do.
Thanks.
All right, so we stopped the live.
See, it say still live on this thing.
Yes, still alive.
You got the recording off though.